Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network. For the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews, press 1.
Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Here we go.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The sound of that can only mean one thing. We're doing Focus.
That theme song again.
What's that?
The Rolling Stones have licensed out that song again.
Indeed. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie. We are here discussing Will Smith and Margot Robbie's Focus. And we have Demetri Panos.
Hello, movie fans.
We have Sarah Stratton.
Hello.
We have Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everybody.
And, of course, Phil Svitek. That's me.
It's you.
That's me.
Welcome.
Let us know where your focus lies.
Focus.
All right, let's start with overall impressions of this movie.
We'll start at ladies first. We'll start at that end of the table.
It was fun to see Will Smith and Margot Robbie. I mean, her career is very on the up and up for her. So it was a fun movie, great cinematography, I think, and we'll definitely get into it. But yeah, for a con movie, which I feel like we haven't seen a lot of con films lately, I found it fairly entertaining.
I am here today because I'm waiting for Phil and Marissa to convince me to like this movie. I did not.
Just give me a moment. Is my mic even on?
Yes,
It
it
better
is.
be.
I did not enjoy this movie. Yes, there were points. My main problem with it is that I like movies. I'm not against a good twist. Love twists, but I want to enjoy the movie and the twist be like an added factor. Instead, I felt myself struggling through scenes and like not enjoying what I was watching, and then them try to save it with a twist that like made me want to like rethink the scenes. But I didn't enjoy it going through it. So it'd be like 20 minutes of watching a painful scene and then them be like, but actually, look at it this way, maybe you'll like it more. And I just thought that it was kind of like cop out. I didn't really understand what the plot was, except for maybe putting together like, this is how someone's relationship was made. But I had a lot of
So what
problems
movies
with
do
this
you
movie.
like? Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels? Like what?
Yeah, I like a lot of con movies, though. I do.
But
like,
name some, because that's going to help us with your bias.
Catch Me If You Can.
Okay.
Loved it. I think that's great. I like it's. If you want to. There's a difference between like con. We talked about this on Box Office Breakdown. There's a difference between like con movies and like heist movies. But I'm all about like heist movies and like big missions, and I wanted to see like a big con come down, and there were like false leads for me where at certain points he was like, oh, you know, we focus on the just like the pickpocketing, we don't go for a grand all heist. But I was like, oh, maybe this is the one time that they do have to do a big heist to like get out of something. And it wasn't, and they added in all these secondary characters who were like great for a minute but didn't really add that much to the story.
You didn't like the ATM machine guy? I love the ATM machine guy.
I did, but that was the thing. There was no real point. Like, their love story turned out to be the main plot line, but it was almost set up as a secondary storyline, so I was missing I was missing storyline A with their romantic connection coming second. Instead, what I realized at the end was that the romantic connection was supposed to be the main storyline with all of the cons coming second. Okay. But this is a con movie, and they lost me from the very get-go of like when you're showing her where he's doing all the touches on her and like stealing her stuff, where it was a shot of just them staring at each other. I was like, this is a con movie. I don't really just want to see them staring at each other. I want to see him actually doing the deed of pickpocketing her. Like, that's my luck as the audience, is that I get to see that even though she doesn't.
He did many deeds.
But I don't know. So it just lost me, and that's what it was. It was that I realized by the end of this that the focus of this movie was their relationship completely. Like, that was the storyline, like the main storyline, and that wasn't enough for me.
Okay.
Well, for me,
Do we just go worse down the panel? Should I be ready for this barrage?
For me, this was going to happen sooner or later. I mean, you can't go a full year of movies without, at least for me, without me saying this once, and this will be the first time in 2015 this movie made me angry. On the level of con movies, this movie was ridiculous, and I didn't buy any of it for a good con movie. And again, like when we walked out of this movie, I jokingly said, well, this sure wasn't The Sting, and a friend of mine was even insulted that I mentioned The Sting while talking about Focus. And a good con movie, number one, has to have a good con that I don't see coming. And I felt that outside of the beginning, with the setup, and outside of them going to New Orleans, everything that was going on to New Orleans, I was like going, okay, getting it. But then that football scene happened.
The 55.
And that's where this movie completely lost me. That whole scene, number one,
in terms of what happened afterwards, their relationship, or what happened during it,
the quote-unquote con, which I knew there was a con because it was set up with, first off, when a character says, watch out and make sure he doesn't gamble away all the money. Guess what's gonna happen? When somebody says, oh, do you want to make a bet? I'm like going, okay, here it comes. And I did not buy at all that he was losing all that money. And then when it came to the reveal as to, well, how did she pick? Like, yes, she only picked him because of the recognition, maybe. But that whole 55, it's like, oh, that's way too convoluted and there's way too much effort going into that con where there's got to be some subtlety. Like, it's one thing to set up an operation of phone lines and fake phone lines and stuff like that, or like a little thing like this in The Sting, other than setting up union worker kind of things, holding up, we support Prop 55 and we get a pin on this guy. Like, that's a magic trick. That is a Penn and Teller magic trick. And Penn and Teller are magicians, but they're bullshit artists and they're con artists. They will admit to that. But the brilliance about them as magicians is that they'll tell you the trick. They're gonna go, hey, we're gonna tell you how the trick is done, and then they are going to do the trick for you, and you still won't know that it's a trick. In this movie, I just knew what was coming down the pike, and even when we got to the end, they set up at the beginning. We've got the what the hell is it called? The Phoenix, Arizona twist or whatever.
The Mexican.
Whatever the hell that thing was called, where somebody shoots the other person. I was like going, well, how much do you want to bet that's going to happen at the end of the movie?
Exactly.
It's just going to be a matter of who's going to shoot who. And then when it happened, I was like going, oh, let me guess then.
Here's the thing. I think
it was silly. It just was way silly.
Okay, so just in that respect, though, what we're arguing about is sometimes you have to stick to certain conventions. Like, had they not set that part up at the beginning, we would all be like, that came out of nowhere. Right? So I think...
But all of us knew, like, there were parts of parts of this movie where I was waiting for it to be done, and I was like, well, I know it can't be done because no one's been shot yet. This movie cannot be finished until one of them shoots each other. Like, you knew that was happening. You knew from the very beginning this movie was not ending until someone got shot.
No, I knew that.
Well, let me ask you this, and again, I do hate to compare this to what I think is probably the best con movie ever made. Won an Academy Award for it, was The Sting. When Robert Redford gets shot at the end of that movie, you do go, holy shit, that came out of nowhere. And like, you buy it. Like, you don't see it coming. You don't know that. You realize a con is going on, but you're not realizing all these pieces are in place for you as the audience to go, holy shit. And even when I watch a movie like The Sting today, or American Hustle is even a better. I mean, American Hustle is a con movie. You know, when you're going into the con, the person being conned, you shouldn't be figuring out 10 steps ahead of the smartest person in the room, who was supposed to be Will Smith, who set himself up to be so invincible that there was no way I'm going to believe that he's going to be conned by anybody, because he's already like 20 steps ahead of everybody else. It's just a matter of when he's going to turn around and do the double back and con whoever it is. So when they got to Brazil, like, first off, if Margot Robbie wasn't there to seek revenge on him for dumping her, then it's the biggest coincidence of movie coincidences that she just happens to be in Brazil with the same race car driver guy. Like, these are all the things that just, yeah, I think here's the thing.
I think you have to go along with some of those things. I mean, okay.
Going along with one thing, yes. Going along like with something in every scene, no.
No, I mean, what did you like going along with? I mean, I agree, yes.
Okay, here's the thing. I mean, I enjoyed it. You know, you could argue, yes, certain things and whatever else. And to your point about him setting himself up as this invincible character, that was, for me, the fun of it as we're going through this, the first 30 minutes, he is pretty much invincible, and we're learning about everything and how it all works.
Right.
And we need to know that because all these things will come into play, yes, later, but will turn themselves on its head against him. And so, yes, you might know the things that are coming, but for me, it was fun seeing it out being played. And everything else.
But did you think at all that he was ever in jeopardy, that things were going to go awry for him? Because I didn't. Because he was too smart. The only thing that I might have figured out, like, there was no way if he. But
that was part of the fun. Was he too smart or was he not too smart? Yeah. And part of it was the filmmaking, right? So taking I'm going to call it the Super Bowl scene.
Okay.
I felt like
football.
But I felt like it was a big, important game. Or at least a playoff game. I don't know. Right?
No, it seemed like the Super Bowl, and they can't say Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl.
So, for me, in the Super Bowl scene, as soon as he sort of loses, more and more money, things go, quote-unquote, out of focus, film-wise, right?
Sure.
So there's that technique, and they're fooling you through the instruments of filmmaking to believe that, okay, is this a condition of his that he has gotten himself into? And therefore, yes, when someone says, don't, make sure he doesn't bet it away, that it, he has this tendency where he is so hot-headed that he gets to a point where he thinks he's invincible, but he isn't. And he knows the odds of some of these things, even as he says later, Vegas gives it, 60% chance? But hey, we pulled it off and whatever else. So 60%, although it sounds relatively high, certainly in gambling terms, is not that high.
No.
And so I he takes these calculated risks and sometimes on a whim.
I understand what you're saying, but again, there was no setup other than that one line. Like, if the movie had opened up with him in Atlantic City gambling, I would have bought the make sure he doesn't gamble the money away. But we didn't. It was just a throwaway line.
You got the horse race.
I don't think it was a throwaway line.
You got the horse race gambling. He was gambling with horse racing.
With horse racing? Okay, I forgot
earlier.
About that. But I just didn't find him to be, watch out, make sure he doesn't gamble the money away. And I'm like, oh, he's going to gamble the money away. And then it was like, then it seems too convoluted because was he setting up the losses as well? Like, did he anticipate on losing all that? No, he had to build that up to the point where he was going to do the most astronomical risk odds against you kind of thing to do.
But it's all in the play to me.
But this is also part of the problem that I had with this bet, because if the whole thing is that you've planned for the subliminal messaging of 55, that means this whole point you're trying to get to that bet. You're trying to get to the guess a number bet.
Right.
And all of the bets up to that were, as you said, coincidence. It was high-low card, and he drew like a 6.
Or his passer run play. Or
like all of those things were like, so he could have won so easily that I just didn't really believe the full plan. And then on top of that, I actually didn't believe Margot Robbie's stance on it, because she was told, don't let him gamble, and it is her money, and she's a spitfire, and she ends up sitting there and watching him do it and watching him waste away all their money, and she stays there, and then at the very end she also goes into play. Like, I didn't believe that she wouldn't just like take her money and leave. I didn't believe that she would sit there and watch.
I kind of believed her character in that particular scene because she just finished her first big real con job.
Yeah.
So again, it was her naivety and like where she stands in that particular situation in the con industry. Like she's not very well. She's not experienced in that. So I believe like the genuineness of like, okay, he's gambling away my money. And again, to go to the line that you said that make sure don't gamble. Yes, it was a setup in I don't think it was a throwaway line because it made me think about Nikki's character, that this is a problem for him, that he has gambled everything, and this is the reason why he's still in the con industry, because he has to keep making money in that way. So like I felt it was more character building rather than story building.
Oh, see, yeah, I just felt like it was kind of annoying, and through the whole thing I felt like it was torture watching him do all the gambling thing, and it dragged.
I didn't think it was torture. I just knew that, like, even the thing, because you don't set up something so astronomically impossible where you get your Reuben to go, I want you to pick. In fact, we'll even have the lady pick the thing. And he was so confident within himself that even when the guy
and he doesn't have
the
to write
Jurassic
it down.
Park guy, that guy was in the original Jurassic Park, by the way, is the Asian B.B. Wong, I think is his name. When he says, do you want me to write it down for you? It's like, no. I'm like going, oh, come on. Like you're not setting up your magic trick where I'm going to believe how you set up your magic trick because I know it's a magic trick now. And that's where the movie for me completely unraveled.
See, I don't see it as magic per se. I see it as neuroscience, and that's what I really liked about this particular con. Because yes, it's not the simple physical con that you see them like stealing people's watches and valuable items. I saw this as a very scientific type of con where they study people's characteristics and implant things in a certain way.
The last point is very scientific. The last bet is very scientific if you like believe in the whole like 55 subliminal thing.
Right.
But every step up to it isn't. And that's what ruins to me. If it was so calculated that each thing, I don't know, maybe they even like went through the deck and it was all low cards. I don't know, but if each thing I felt was scientific and rational and had like a reason behind it, then maybe I would believe why this last hurrah of 55 was so pinpointed. But all the little ones, they weren't. They were just like, oh, maybe.
Okay, but here's the thing. You have to also look at it like, okay, if he won an early bet, so he takes home $100 home and doesn't get the big pot. So be it. That's to me, that's part of the calculation of, okay, it didn't work in that favor. So he walks away with 500. Okay. It is what it is.
Yeah, I don't think that was the goal, though. Because
I understand that wasn't the goal, but I think you cut your loss. It's like in anything, you cut your losses based on, the sequence of events.
Yeah, a good con movie isn't about cutting your losses. And he even said, because Margot Robbie was like, well, what if that didn't work for some reason? He goes, well, then we're going to keep on doubling down until it worked. And I'm like going...
So did you have another brilliant plan for like?
Was there a B plan, a C plan?
Apparently there was.
Are you? It's like he was the Dark Knight, or he had all these contingencies.
You guys like magic? I mean,
I do like. Well, I mentioned Penn and Teller because they at least will go out and call shenanigans. And again, but to me, the brilliance of a Penn and Teller is they know that we as the audience are the rubes, and they will tell us their trick. They'll tell us how they do it, and then in the same breath, they do the trick in front of us, and we're like, wait a minute, they just told us I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. That's brilliant. And when I'm watching a movie like, say, The Sting, or even a smaller film called Confidence, which
what about Ocean's 11? Would you call
Ocean's 11?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even an Ocean's 11 movie, number one, the characters, I have to believe that the characters are somewhat fallible and that maybe they're going to lose. Or even if they're setting things up so brilliantly, there's got to be something they're not showing me as the audience that I don't see something happening or coming, so that at the end when our con men win, because we're rooting for them, but there's got to be a sense of danger.
Well, the other thing is, that's the thing. It's that you talk about the sense of danger, and there's moments, but there's not a. there's no great con in this. Like, even when you get to the whole engine fuel or whatever it is, like, that wasn't really, to me, amped up. It was dealt with so quickly and on so many little points that I didn't really care about who was getting this fuel, and that should be more important. Him, like, conning these big race car companies should be a big deal, and all of it was just like second fiddle. And so I wasn't following anything, and the whole time I was like, watching this movie, I was like, what is the plot of this movie? What is the when are we going to see some crisis? When is this going to hit a roadblock?
I will admit the plot was, in that respect, it was slightly unconventional because it didn't have a clear, we get the first half, right, when they're quote unquote the love story, and then we get the con, but secondary, as to your point, Sarah, the love story, but then ultimately it builds up to be that love story.
Exactly.
At the end.
Like, I felt at the end of this movie that there should have been like a prequel in the beginning, like it should pop up on the screen or something, being like, and this is how two cons fell in love.
Well, I was just like, and believe it or not, I was actually sort of kind of buying the movie at the beginning. I sort of.
It wasn't for sale.
Huh? Yeah, it was. I get it wasn't for sale, but I bought it. Unfortunately, I bought the ticket too. But in any case, no, I was into the beginning of the movie because I like the whole premise of, okay, so we see Will Smith. He knows he's being calm, but he wants to see how far they're going to take it with him. And he's like, and that scene in the bedroom is like, no, go ahead, shoot me. And they're like, what? He's like, go ahead, shoot me. You're doing it all wrong. And you could sort of kind of see where this is going. And it reminded me of, what's the characters in the movie Oliver?
Oliver the movie?
Oliver Twist. Who's your little... pickpocket boy who's being trained to be the pickpocket, and that's what I thought we were sort of kind of gonna get. And I was like going, okay, and then they're gonna work together, and with any romantic story, she's gonna go off and something's gonna happen, he's gonna get jealous or at least pretend to be jealous, and we're gonna buy all this. But that didn't really end up happening.
I was waiting I was like, oh, she's gonna seek revenge and she's gonna con him, or like something was gonna happen where like it wasn't just gonna be like, oh, they broke up for a while. Like there would have been some action.
I will admit, it would have been fun to see kind of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith moment, almost like in like in 22 Jump Street, with like, you're Mr. Smithing me.
Yeah. No.
I admit, like, going after New Orleans went down, I would have liked to see Margot Robbie's character like really just come back and hit him hard. But that didn't happen.
I also just want to point out that like one of my favorite scenes in the movie is in New Orleans when she's being trained in the streets, and there's a moment where she goes off on her own and it's not really enough, and she pushes the envelope. She shows that she's growing. She shows that she can handle it, and like how they shot it, it was fun. I got to see this game being played. Sure. And so for her character, she was on this rise for me. She started as very clueless, out of her league. She teams up with him, and she just is growing exponentially. So by the time we see her again 3 years later, I wanted her to be a pro. I wanted her to be a con who was going to be able to con Will Smith, who they set up as being fantastic. And instead, even he says it, you're still doing watches?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she's clueless, and she has no idea. That bothered me.
And that's why, again, because they set Will Smith up so to be impervious, that when we met in Brazil, my first instinct was, oh, she's following him, she's going to set him up. But there was like, as soon as he saw her, my first thought was, if I were him going, she's going to try to F me over, I got to be really careful. My other problem about Brazil was, what happened to his team? If you're doing such a big con that's going to involve a lot of things, like they had a whole team that they apparently worked together before in New Orleans. Like there was only one guy that showed up.
And that's my question to you, because during that whole conversation when he was talking to her again, off on their own, he did mention, like, I haven't really done anything since New Orleans. I don't know if that was true or if that was just a line that he said to convince Jess.
What it seems
that he
like later
wasn't
is that
in
it's a
the
lie.
industry
It was
anymore.
part of the she changed him story that he needed to insert into her subliminal,
Right.
like into her subconscious. Like, I was on board at the beginning too, even though I wasn't fully. I don't know if I'm. Did you guys like the Margot Robbie Will Smith pairing? I like them both separately as actors. I thought
Same here.
I like them. I don't know if I was fully. I almost liked the earlier teacher-student relationship that they had versus the like soulmate relationship that they ended up having at the end. Maybe that's like this role in the script is written for Will Smith's character is written for a 30-something. Like that is what it says in the screenplay, a 30-something.
Well, it was supposed to be like a Ryan Gosling was one of the first people.
Ryan Gosling was on board. All these people were on board. Like for Margot Robbie's role, like Kristen Stewart, Emma Stone, like all these people have been rumored to have it. But he was supposed to be a lot younger. And then when they changed it, I did think it was going to be a big change into more of a student-teacher relationship. And they like toyed with that idea for about a scene and then just went straight back to this romance. And then that's what our story was. And they didn't make that clear from the beginning, so I was just a little confused.
Like the scene that is the picture that's behind us. Okay. I was buying them together that way.
This is at the bar.
This is at the bar. Like, and I was buying their patter at the bar and everything, and teacher, like you said, teacher-student thing. As the movie went on, their chemistry sort of kind of like, they were good, but I wasn't necessarily buying into the whole, and again, I wasn't buying into the love story, and this is where I think the movie was, pardon the pun, but gotta say it was out of focus, and it was all over the place, and it bit off a little bit more than it could chew. It wanted to be a great con movie. It wanted to get us with a twist, and at the same time, it wanted to make us go, "Aw," and have a romantic comedy.
I think the thing is, like, I agree that I think the student-teacher relationship, business partner kind of relationship, they should have just stuck with that, because if they tried building this romantic relationship, we didn't have the payoff in the end where like she got him back after that.
Well,
so like I think it would have been better if they just kept it to the mentor-student relationship.
Let's transition to
by the way, it's the Artful Dodger. The Artful Dodger in Fate. Like, and that's what I thought. She was going to be his Artful Dodger in a sense. So
fair enough. I want to start transitioning to the actual process of making this movie, because I don't want to just spew hatred all over this.
No.
Especially
there's lots going on.
when I'm just taking daggers left and right and have been more quiet than I should be. But even though Demetri hates talking about the story, let's start with the story of how Margot Robbie got cast. Since we're talking about all the other people that should have, could have played this role.
So what I have heard about her audition, it goes something like this, was that Miss Margot Robbie was, vacationing in an island off Croatia with her brother, because, she's a movie star, so she can do stuff like that. And then she got a call.
Is that sarcasm or hatred or both?
That was neither. I feel like I said that.
I was like, oh, of course, yeah. When I read it too, it's just like, oh, shit.
That might have been more jealousy.
She's in Croatia.
She's just chilling. And so I just like that this is all part of the story. And then she gets a call that she has this audition in New York. So she, right away, pretty much, she hops on a ferry and she goes to the plane and she waits 6 hours and then she takes a 6-hour flight. And woohoo, she shows up in New York and her luggage is lost and she's wearing shorts and a t-shirt and no makeup. And I'm kind of like, Margot Robbie, people already know what you look like because you're famous, but that's fine. She shows up at this audition and they called her to audition. It's not like whatever. Anyway, so she shows up and they're not starting on time because Will Smith is late. So Will Smith shows up and he's like, I'm sorry, I'm late. I came all the way from Queens. And Margot Robbie is sassy back to him and she's like, really? I came from Croatia, however you say that. Yeah. And then they had this fun banter, and she's like, and that's why I got the role, because I didn't know really who Will Smith was, and I was willing to be sassy to him.
Yeah, not knowing who Will Smith was. See, I'm gonna just say, I think she's on the cusp of being famous. I think that with Suicide Squad, which will get a ton of viewers, I think that'll definitely help. Yes, I heard the same thing about her getting her audition, and I knew that Will Smith wasn't the first choice to go to in this movie. Look, I think Will Smith is at a point in his career. He says that this movie was his turning point, his change. He took a lot of hits.
Change to what?
Well, he learned a valuable lesson.
This is rated R, and he hasn't done a rated R movie in a while.
In a long time. And 6 Degrees of Separation, you can almost argue, is a con movie. It's about a con artist, that's for sure. But in any case, I think that for him, after the movie After Earth, okay, and the cinematic poo-poo that it is, he took a lot of hits, and he did a lot of self-introspection about his career, because there was a time, like, you know, he could do no wrong. He could star in a shit movie like The Wild Wild West and still make it a hit, still open it up. I mean, he was.
Well, action films built his career, other than Prince, you know, Bel Air. But
he was
he was huge in action.
He was
films.
July 4th box office gold. I mean, he had a string of movies that were huge, like 8 #1 movies in a row. It's unprecedented. It's a fantastic run. A movie like After Earth comes out and just gets demolished, not by just the press, by box office as well. And for him, he's like, his whole thing was, a lot of what was said about him hurt. It was very hurtful, but then he came to the realization that the clock never stopped ticking, the earth never stopped spinning. You know what? I know that in my heart, I know that I'm a good person. Yes, that was a bad movie. And getting on board with this movie for him was a change of tactic and pace. And he felt that this was this is the start of what he's calling his next chapter, so to speak. So, you know.
Which I think certainly a couple of things I can appreciate about Will. Everyone who's ever met him, and even hasn't, says he's an amazing guy, right? Mm-hmm. And I respect the fact that he can look at his body of work and say, you know, the most valuable thing is not necessarily awards. Yes, that means a lot to me, but it's someone paying money to go to my movie.
Right.
That's the number one thing that anyone can give me when I make these things.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that, you know, I think it means a lot to him if he says, okay, my movies haven't been so great, and so he takes it to heart and he's making that change. We've been telling you, you guys have made it no secret that you dislike the movie, but can you say that you disliked Will Smith in the movie?
Oh no, I think that he did a really good job. I think when it came to where he was, like, with his tactics, I believed he was smart. I believed there were certain things that hit home. I honestly just don't think it was a good movie.
Right.
I don't put the blame on him or on Margot or on all of. I thought that one of the strongest points of the movie was, like, especially the acting of your secondary characters. And came in, whether it be the guy who made the ATM machine cover, whether it was the guy at the very beginning who was kind of one of his right-hand man of the team, who was kind of making his own sassy remarks. Right. Also, the guy who is from 300, who played our race car driver, I thought he did a fine job.
I didn't mind the performances all that much. And let's get Will Smith, as far as box office, as far as movies, let's take box office out of it. Let's face it, the man has a screen persona and a charisma. You know, when he comes on screen, the types of movies, whether it's a romantic comedy kind of a movie like A Hitch, which he can pull off, or an Independence Day, or a Bad Boys, we like. I mean, and he crosses over. You know, I mean, men, women alike enjoy seeing Will Smith because he has this demeanor and he can be funny, but you can believe him in a fight and you can believe that he might win in that fight as well. So he has a presence. I like seeing him in movies. I think that he's had, with After Earth, I think he sort of kind of has had, you know, it happens to everybody. Everybody thinks they're going to stay on top, but it's very cyclical. Mm-hmm. He's picked some bad choices, After Earth. And again, when you're built that high, people have expectations that every movie you're going to be in is going to be that huge. And After Earth was billed as being, hey, it's a summer movie. Will Smith is in it. This guy's track record is amazing this time of year. and it wasn't. And even for him, it was like, wow. He's like emotionally, like he was thinking, could my career be over? Well, there are certain projects, it is dictated by audience and what we want to see him in. If he were to say yes to Independence Day 2, audiences would go. And you know what? Audiences would really like him. If he's just got to pick that right movie. And I think he's on that verge again. He won't go away, and I do think he's a solid, fun actor to watch on screen. Whether it be spring, summer, fall, or winter, he's a good actor. And again, I don't fault him for why I didn't like Focus.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think the Focus's problem as a film was the acting whatsoever. I think it was more so the storyline and the direction it was going in.
And the soundtrack.
You didn't like
And
the
the
soundtrack.
score.
Why did you not like the
sound-
soundtrack?
Oh, the score? You guys...
The score or the soundtrack?
I'm going to go with the score. I'll take back. There's a couple songs I liked on the soundtrack. The score, especially under Will Smith, Margot Robbie one-on-one scenes, was so overworked. I'm surprised none of you noticed. Okay.
It was the synthesized type of music, correct?
It was just like... I felt like someone was hammering into my head. Feel emotion. Feel emotion right now. And I was like, please, I just want to hear them speak. I'd rather be silent than hear.
But
like,
here's
it
the
was
thing with
so
that,
overworked.
Okay.
Sorry.
But, okay, you might not have liked it, but I think in something like that, for this type of movie, you have to have music. No, you do, because you have to keep it moving. And had you taken that away...
I'm saying I would rather have heard nothing than heard that. I'm not saying that that's the right choice. I'm saying that it should be a nice score that should just... Scores should just mold. They should be one together. I shouldn't be thinking the score is too loud while watching an intimate conversation.
Okay, but we talked about this with Interstellar. Hans Zimmer is known for his scores being even...
Oh my gosh, but that's an epic space giant thing about black holes
Did he
and
have something
visuals.
to do with the score of this movie? Hans Zimmer?
I don't think
that's
not to my
But
knowledge.
that's an epic, like you were saying. That's an epic film that's supposed to have
I
big
didn't notice
booming
the score
music.
in
This one is
movie.
like
I
an
did.
And I'm a soundtrack person.
indie
Here's the
movie.
thing. Like I
But you're
said,
talking about the source music, I think.
The source music,
Yeah, the
yeah.
source music.
well, I enjoyed both, right? But
Okay.
but at the same time, I'm saying, for me, overall, it was a nice blend of music we know and music that was made specifically for the movie, and it had to keep things going.
Right.
You just did. There's no way you can't. This isn't Boyhood where you can have a 2-minute quiet scene.
I'm not saying
the
that-
music in Boyhood,
When I say I'd rather have it
pertain to
silent, it
that.
doesn't mean that I think movies should be in silence. I love score. I'm saying that it would have been better, and that's kind of that's a bad note.
I understand it's bad. I get what you're saying, that it's not good.
Okay, I mean, again, for a con movie, one thing, a con movie is meant, its whole purpose is to manipulate an audience. That's what a con movie is. It's to manipulate an audience to, hey, look what I have over here. Wham! Look at this. I just tricked you. You were conned. You believed this was going to happen. ABC.
I get what's going on here. You guys are conning me that you hate this movie.
That's right, I am. That's what I'm going to lead to. There's going to be a
In the
huge
end, they
twist. But I'm
actually
going to go
love
and say, this didn't make me angry. I came out and said, this was the best thing since this thing. No. But in music is very, plays a key part of, I think, in most any movie, as far as if you want to go so far and use the word manipulation. But it does. When you look at a movie like Jaws, that movie manipulates you into being horrified without even seeing anything on screen other than open water. So music can have that connotation. Now, in this movie, I didn't notice the score. I noticed more of the Rolling Stones and what other of the music that they played for wherever they were. I don't think it didn't affect me either way and which way I was going with this movie.
And it affected me and made me think that scenes dragged.
Okay. Well, speaking of cons and whatever, Apollo Robbins, are you guys familiar with this guy?
Yes.
I was not. But in terms of the whole sleight of hands, he was the expert brought on to make sure that this worked.
And he has a whole career off of teaching people about cons and the tricks of the trade. He's like hired by police, by all sorts to go in, and he even started, I believe, some sort of organization that brings in ex-criminals to then help teach law professionals.
Yeah, he was part of. He was pickpocketing security people during the Jimmy Carter administration and such. And he's one of those guys that he was so good at his job at being bad that they probably picked him up and arrested him and said, "Hey, we could use you. Like, you could teach us what to avoid."
What they did.
And now, I believe the other movie, he worked on Ocean's 11. He also worked on A Fish Called Wanda, which I find to be a much better, funnier con movie. But when you look at the whole for him, and in fact, the movies that A Fish Called Wanda and Ocean's 11, I have to retract. Those are some of his favorite movies, including one that I love and near and dear to my heart, Paper Moon. But yeah, when you have a job like that and teaching people how to do a con, he also did Now You See Me, which is predicated on magic. And that's what I felt that Super Bowl scene was.
Yeah, I was going to reference Now You See Me because the whole neuroscience and subliminal messages, they use that a lot in that film.
Right.
I enjoyed Now You See Me as well. I understand its flaws in that too.
Yeah,
but
I enjoyed it more than this movie, even though I don't think that movie was as good as a lot of people said. But I had a better time watching it.
But I liked how they portrayed all the sleight of hands and how they shot it in the editing.
In this one?
Yeah, in this particular film, in Focus, because it does go by so fast you don't even see it, literally. And I liked how they just shot this, like, focus here, you take from here. People don't really think of that. And how they executed it so seamlessly on screen was pretty fascinating to watch.
I think they used the cinematography too, both from an actual focal point, within the frame, but then also by the framing itself. I thought they did a really good job of what you should be, quote unquote, focusing on. Like I said, going back to the Super Bowl scene, it made me believe that he was going crazy because this is something that he's been through and he's lost control of himself because everything went out of focus. Right.
Well, and Apollo Robbins even goes on and saying, look, in all honesty, it's sleight of hand. And he goes, where the blurred line, he goes, but the problem with the term is people misinterpret that as being magic. It was really, that's more what you'd see in Now You See Me. He goes, there is a sleight of hand in the con world, and Focus does use some of that, but these techniques range beyond that. And again, to me, it's all about the way that you pick a pocket, the way that, when you bump into somebody, yes, you're focusing their attention on their shoulder being hit, and while your brain is processing the bump, they're picking your back, other pocket and such. So, he's focused on psychology. Which, listen, if I go to New Orleans during the Super Bowl, I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna take a cab or Uber directly to, and I want somebody who will escort me in, because they look like there was a lot of money being taken away, and a lot of watches and purses and camera lenses. The camera lens was the one that got me.
They're expensive.
They are wicked expensive, and I was like, oh my head, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure it happens in downtown LA and whatnot a lot,
Absolutely.
And I liked how they mentioned, like, their overall total at the end of that was like 1 point something million. And
that was the profit.
Yeah, the profit. But like for as little amount of time they took all that, they made that much money. It's like, wow.
Well, I always, that to me was one of the more interesting parts of this movie as well, because ticket scalpers, right? They kind of,
right.
I know, for better or worse, I know people who literally, they just go to these big events, they get an office in a hotel, they literally just ransack in terms of they bring in their printers, their computers, whatever, and for the next 2 days, they have a ticking clock of, we gotta sell all these tickets to this big event. And if we, as soon as, let's say it's in the third quarter, we're effed. There's no way you're going to sell any of these,
right?
Right. And especially, and once the game ends and you're left with, let's say, 100 of them, that's it.
Right.
It's not like you can take them to the next event. So at least these guys, there wasn't that there was that ticking time bomb, but they didn't have to get rid of something. They just had to amass
The
it.
whole business was fascinating. I agree. I thought that was really cool.
And it was mostly about the week building up to Super Bowl. Because like the whole thing was supposed to be where we were led to believe that Super Bowl was going to be the vacation, the downtime. It's like, hey, you going to the Super Bowl? Yeah, of course I got tickets, and we're going to go and have a good time. But then that's just the ultimate con on top of what they already had. But they needed that seed money in order to get into that suite so that they can bet that seed money to make more money. But I like the events that were in during that week that were leading up to the big con.
Cool business. But that got dropped after the first third, and you get no more of the cool business.
Yeah. But it's an interesting job if you get to be like, if you get this Apollo Robbins guy, what a career he's made up for himself. But again, why wouldn't you hire
An expert.
But
I think the fundamental difference, though, as we're talking about, let's say with a story like Now You See Me, and to me, magic in general, I look at David Copperfield, his magic tells a story.
Sure.
Whereas if you're just pulling off a con, especially in the earlier parts of this movie, you're just doing it for a specific purpose. It's not to tell a story.
Right.
Right? With Now You See Me, it was a whole performance.
Right.
And I think that, not again, Ocean's 11 is for a very specific purpose, and it works very well for people. So, but I think had you made more of a story out of the con in that respect of how it fully, I think it could have worked.
Right.
But it worked for me. So
yeah, well, I don't. Well, we already know those opinions. I was going to jump to because I think there is one thing that we all do agree on. We were talking about this prior, and that's the way this movie looked, the cinematography. And such. And again, I'm not going to take away that this movie did not look good. That they filmed New Orleans looked great. Brazil looked great. Even those scenes in New York, looked really good.
It's actually not Brazil, though.
What was it?
Buenos Aires.
Yeah, I thought it was Brazil that they were.
They will hate you for that.
Sorry.
They almost had Argentina win the World Cup on their soil.
Oh, the World Cup.
That's not something that Brazil likes
to be
compared to.
Sleight of hand intended.
No, there.
So,
I will
but
say.
I did like the way
And of course, New
visually.
York, in the snow and all that.
Yeah.
They shot in December. That was really cool.
Right. Visually, this movie looked fantastic. The colors, like every particular scene, was beautifully colored and lit, especially when they were in Buenos Aires. How colorful it was outside in the atmosphere and environment, and then even when they're in the hotel, when it's even dark, it's nice and blue and interestingly lit in that way. So visually, it was just so awesome to look at.
Well, even the Super Bowl scene, like the scene in that box, that executive suite there, looked really, it was filmed really well. I wasn't buying anything but like the sweat, the cinematographer was doing his best to build attention, which is coming through. To me, what was interesting about this movie from a technical standpoint was that this was the very first major studio film edited on Apple's Final Cut. I'm going to call it 10, not X, or maybe it is called X.
They call it 10, but everyone calls it X. I get it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And back in 2013, when Neil Smith was doing a presentation at the Digital Society, he made a hint as to the movie that he was editing, and obviously we've kind of confirmed that. That's congratulations.
Sure.
Yeah, it's big for Apple.
I hate Final Cut 10.
It's not.
So.
Well, to me, what makes it, what makes it fascinating is when found this great article about how Javier Grobet, on using Final Cut X or 10 and using the cameras and the digital cameras and being able to set up shots, film the shots, and being able to have a trailer that had this program in it. And they were pretty much able to edit the dailies and get a good sense of rhythm and pacing. And they were able to do it pretty much on site. That to me is, well, a little piece of me inside me dies because there's no more, say, Verna Fields, fantastic editor of Jaws, where people are actually putting together film strips. Now I understand
that's long gone, though.
That's long gone. I get that, but there was a work and an artistry to that. I think that now it really is a drag and drop culture. I don't mean to simplify it as much to those editors out there working today. I understand that they have a hard job, and when you're doing a con movie, editing is so important because it does have to focus the attention. It's got to like bring the audience's attention somewhere, and a lot of that's done by editing. And so being able to edit on the fly like that with technology, that's pretty amazing to me.
It is pretty amazing, but at the same time, there's nothing, as fast as we can get, there's only so fast that the human mind can actually, you need time to step away from the work.
Right.
Think about it, what's working, what's not working, and unfortunately, you can kind of make that up in a big studio system because you can have people look at it and whatever else, but at the end of the day, that's just something that can't be replicated, and especially on an indie movie.
Right.
You can go as fast as you want, but you will not make that great movie until you give it the time that it needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what Robey was saying, he goes, with Light Iron, I pretty much had the lab and a trailer next to the set the entire movie, so we were able to download and color time. Then literally the next person over at another station would be doing dailies, syncing and providing all of the deliverables for the studio. I mean, that to me is crazy. The efficiency that brings.
I was going to say, it sounds like an assembly line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what it...
But it's great because you don't have to have... How many times, ultimately, yes, you'll end up probably doing reshoots, especially for this type of movie, or, if you're doing, like, let's say the Avengers or whatever else. But it makes it much more easier to see, okay, wow, that shot did not work, or that shot did work,
Yeah, and you can change it. It appears as if you can make a change on the fly. Mm-hmm. And if you do have multiple takes, it's easy to see those takes there and then. Take this out, I'm going to plug this one in. Do you like this one better? What works? And then if we're going to pace, well, we're running too slow. Well, what if we take out this scene? Yeah. From an efficiency standpoint, it is crazy what the industry has able to accomplish. And when you're talking about a movie like this, which in its production budget alone was 50 million or so, 51 million, if it were done any other way, it could have been a lot more. It seems that it could be cost effective. I mean, how does one get Final Cut 10 from an Apple store? Yeah. I mean, right? And I don't know how much it costs.
It's pretty. I mean, here's the thing. For a basic I'm sure what we're talking about. Yes, they got a great computer. They got great kind of input, ingestion, all this hard drives and whatever else.
Right.
But for the common man, it can be relatively cheap. And yes, it's going to take you more time to ingest all the footage, and you might not necessarily have this assembly line of it, but you can make a movie.
Yeah.
So we had a $50 million budget, and they made
30 million up to date.
Yeah, it's about
somewhere around 35.
They're about. I'm gonna go right now close to 38 estimated. Their whole thing, including hard drives and all that things, was 85. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting. But it was his first #1 movie in a while. I'd have to look up what After Earth did opening weekend.
#1 movie, but in a dead box office week.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, I mean we're
but that was part of the strategy.
Like this isn't a summer movie.
Mm-hmm. No.
And here's the thing: you don't want to go in that. We're starting early, and
no. Warner Brothers picked a good date for them. I mean, you're not going to compete with this movie in the summer. You would have to throw so much more and make the trailers so much flashier. And again, I think people After Earth sort of really dinged Will Smith's career, and he understands. I think he's just got to bring it back up. He's got to start again, and he has to gain an audience's trust. The audience gave this movie a B, which I think that's kind, but that's not great yet. He's eventually going to find that movie, and it could be Suicide Squad, that people are going to love him again. They're going to go, oh, Will Smith, and things like After Earth. So to kind of, eventually they turn to dust.
What do you think? You look at Will Smith, apart from Men in Black, has he done a franchise movie for the most part?
They tried, Bad Boys.
Bad Boys,
okay. We got 2 out of that.
Right.
But what I'm saying, unlike Robert Downey Jr. and things like, and Wolverine.
Hugh Jackman,
right? He's not been in, like, Hugh Jackman has made his career out of playing
Out of the
Wolverine.
X-Men movies.
You know? And so he's not ever been in that sort of situation where he's done those types of things. For the most part, whether it's a Hitch, whether it's Hancock, whether it's After Earth and this, he's doing sort of quote unquote original movies, again with the exceptions of Bad Boys and Men in Black 3, which
And the fact that what made us love him was him doing Fresh Prince for years and years and years.
But that's not a franchise film.
I understand that, but that is what made him a household name, is that we saw him on TV.
That's smart of his career. I mean, good for him.
Look, but the other thing that you have to think about too is even back when he had a movie like Bad Boys, which came out in 1995, okay, the word franchise wasn't as dirty a word as it is today.
I don't think it's a dirty word either.
Well, it's starting to. I'm going to say that the word franchise is starting. That bloom is falling off the rose. I think that it's starting to get groans and it's starting to be made fun of. But back in 1995, you were thinking of, I'm going to make a movie. If this movie's a hit, maybe I can get a sequel out of it. We'll try to work it that way instead of just thinking franchise. Because when Bad Boys comes out, and him as Mike Laurie, and then we have Michael Bay. That movie did really well. He's still in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but then he does Independence Day. And that movie was huge. And then after that, he does Men in Black. Again, 1997, huge. Then he's in Enemy of the State, another really big movie. Wild Wild West, piece of crap, but it did really well when it opened. Then he's like, Men in Black. Then he does a smaller movie, Legend of Bagger Vance, which is a golf movie. Mm-hmm. Then he's Ali, and I forget if he was nominated for Ali.
He won.
But that was Michael Mann, I believe,
Mann, yeah.
Right? Bad Boys 2. Okay, so, you're not thinking he's not going to make a franchise out of Ali. It took 2003 for there to be a Bad Boys 2. Okay, the first one was in 1995. Then he's in iRobot. Could be franchisable, but that movie does really well. He's a voice in Shark Tale. He does really well with Hitch. He was picking projects that everything that he pretty much was touching, like, without even the word franchise being mentioned, was a hit. He was very, very, at the time, probably one of the more bankable stars that you can hire to put into a movie, up until, say, After Earth. So, and you're right. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have the Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Hugh Jackman, who's made a career outside of.
Absolutely,
he's made a great career outside of Wolverine as well.
I mean, here's the thing. I give Hugh Jackman so much credit. The fact that he has been able to make a career outside of just playing Wolverine, because it seems like every 2 minutes all he's doing is playing Wolverine.
Yeah, and it's great for him. About his franchises like Men in Black 3, they haven't gone beyond the 2 with Bad Boys. They're just talking right now about Independence Day 2, and that came out in 96. So. Wild Wild West, I think they were hoping to franchise out, or at least to get a sequel. You got to remember, too, when you're talking the word franchise, you're thinking going above and beyond just 2 or 3 movies. Like,
certainly Hunger Games has redefined what a trilogy actually means.
Right, or
Harry Potter, for sure.
So,
but that's not a trilogy.
You're hoping to build, like, the Marvel Universe, and get a ton of movies out of like this one universe, just like we're going to see with Star Wars. So with Will Smith, he's never been attached, but it wasn't really in the lexicon back then. And I think for him to pick the movies, it took him a lot. There were big gaps, which is usually a no-no in the world of sequels. You try to squeeze that puppy out as soon as you can, because you don't want people forgetting about it. But it didn't seem to matter.
Dumb and Dumber 2.
Yeah. But Bad Boys 2 did. Okay, like it wasn't.
That was good.
Yeah, and so Men in Black 2, Men in Black 3, fun movies, and he was able to make them work. So,
All right.
I wish I could see him actually in Independence Day 2. I mean, personally.
I think we all wanted to see that.
You know what? It might be like Famke Jensen, and he'll surprise us all.
Yeah.
All right, let's regain focus. Let's get back to track here. Any last closing thoughts on the movie Focus? You loved it. Excellent. We all loved it.
We are in agreement.
Just what? For better or worse, there's worse things to do in life than go see a movie. Go see Focus.
People did. People did, and we'll, with a B, we'll see if they continue to go on through the, coming weekends. But, I think for him, he's not with the 55% Rotten Tomatoes thing, which to me again is liberal. But I think people want Will Smith to come back. They want to root for him, and I think they're also really hyping Margot Robbie to be the next It Girl. They're really hyping her a lot.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I will say, as you guys have mentioned, the characters on screen, they're fun. So you know what? To me, I just go along with that. Whether or not the story fully makes sense, fine. I'll come to that. But those guys on screen, I enjoyed. So on that note, we would like to thank you guys for listening. A tirade of hatred.
Well, what are some of your favorite con movies? I mean, I was looking up con
Lock,
movies.
Stock, Two Smoking Barrels for me, right up there.
Okay.
Shoot, what's the other one? Layer Cake isn't necessarily a con movie, quote unquote, but it's kind of a con movie.
What about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which works as a romantic, which has a great female character, and it's a great comedy? Steve Martin, Michael Caine. It's great. I don't know. Color of Money is a great.
I love
con
Catch Me
movie.
If You Can.
Catch Me If You Can is
Leonardo
really good.
can do no wrong.
I would call it, for better, Prestige is kind of, sort of, it's a sleight of hand. It's different, but
I do love that movie too.
It's great. Now You See Me, we mentioned that. I do
White
enjoy
Man
that.
Can't Jump?
Yes. The Ocean's franchise,
11? Sure.
all of them, I think are fun. 12, you know what I mean? I get what people say and whatever, but I like all three.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first saw The Sting. And that one to me is just that's the godfather of all con movies. For me, Confidence is a pretty good movie too.
Fair enough. Let us know your thoughts on the Focus, the movie, and then of course what other con movies you guys enjoyed.
Yeah, please do.
I enjoyed the panel.
I enjoyed the characters
You
in
enjoyed
this
the panel too.
All right, guys, we'll see you here next time for another Anatomy of a Movie. On behalf of Demetri Panos, who can be found at
DMovies1701.
Sarah Stretton, who can only be found at #Sarah Stretton on Twitter, Instagram, and
#Sarah Good at Twitter.
That's right. At Serafini TV.
Yep.
And of course, our Twitter is Movie Anatomy, and Popcorn Talks is the Popcorn Talk on Twitter and Instagram. We have a Facebook, so check that out. And of course, check out the plethora of other Popcorn Talk shows. We'll be starting a couple of other ones really, really soon. A lot to be excited for.
I'm excited for the spring movies.
The spring movies,
Yeah.
which into some.
We'll see you here.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.